Public information. Please pause the video if you would like to read the complete public information. This video is an email exchange between the Neath MP Christina Rees and the Neath-Port Talbot Council Chief Executive Karen Jones. The subject matter of the initial email is the Council of Death document delivered to 15 Neath-Port Talbot councillors on the 7th of September 2020. The complete document can be found on our YouTube channel Walk Around Wales by searching for the term Neath-Port Talbot Council of Death document. The document shows how the Council Planning Department worked with the demolition and asbestos removal company Cuddy Group Limited to avoid remediation of contaminated land through a series of planning approvals between 2008 and 2010. This broke the 1990 Environmental Protection Act. The purpose of the submitted document was to verify the responsibilities and the actions of the Neath-Port Talbot Council when contaminated land was reported to them as part of a Cuddy Group planning application in 2008, and to identify whether or not the Council have upheld these responsibilities. However, for 3 years the Council have hidden the document. The chain begins with an email from Christina Rees to Stephen Carl Hunt. Email sent Thursday, April the 20th, 2023 at 11:46 a.m. Subject: Glynneath residents against contamination. Dear Councillor Hunt, I am writing to you on behalf of the Chairman of the Glynneath Residents Against Contamination, Mr. Di Richards. Mr. Richards has sent me the following, that he would like you, in your capacity as leader of the Council, to address directly. Mr. Richards has asked that Christina please make representation on our behalf of our group Glynneath Residents Against Contamination to the Council Leader at NPTC, Stephen Carl Hunt, requesting an official response from the Council in relation to a document submitted to 15 Neath-Port Talbot Council councillors in September 2020 that identified the Council breached the UK Government's 1990 Environmental Protection Act during the planning process at the Hale Glyn site. To date, this document has not been responded to, and there is clear evidence that the head of planning at NPTC, Kerry Morris, has misrepresented this UK Government legislation. I have copied in Councillor Llewellyn as Deputy Leader and Councillor Loyal as Mr. Richards, Local Councillor. I would appreciate a response to Mr. Richards. If you have any questions about the points raised by Mr. Richards, please let me know. Otherwise, I look forward to your reply. Yours sincerely, Christina Rees, MP. Date 27th of April 2023. To Christina Rees MP, Member of Parliament for Neath. Dear Christina, I am responding to your email to the Council Leader dated the 20th of April 2023. Mr. Richards is known to this authority and in the past 3 years has forwarded significant correspondence to officers and elected members. Some of this correspondence has been potentially libellous, and I would draw your attention to a website, www.walkaroundwales.com, which provides an overview of the nature of correspondence and allegations which have been directed at officers and elected members. This has necessitated, on some occasions, referrals to South Wales Police. The Council refutes all such allegations that have been made regarding alleged impacts of contaminated land in Glynneath, and this point has been clear with evidence to Mr. Richards continuously. Mr Richards' comments concerning the Council's Head of Planning and Public Protection and elected members are both unwarranted and lacking any foundation. Mr Richards' concerns have been dealt with via the Council's complaint process and in 2021 reached the stage that the Council's unreasonable and persistent complaints policy was invoked, and Mr Richards made aware that the Council representatives would no longer correspond with him. Mr Richards has, I understand, also been advised of various avenues where he can complain further, such as the Public Service Ombudsman for Wales, Audit Wales, or even remedies available in the High Court, but to date has not chosen to pursue these options, or where he has, there has been found no breaches of any obligations. Turning specifically to the issue of land contamination at the site and whether the Council has historically contravened the Environmental Protection Act 1990, officers have advised me that this legislation no longer applies when a site is going through the planning process. By definition, therefore, the Council has not at any point contravened its duties under this legislation, as it is not relevant once the planning process has commenced. What is relevant, however, is that through the planning process, the Council is required to address land contamination to ensure sites are safe and suitable for use after development has been completed. Officers have quite rightly drawn Mr Richards' attention to the fact that these matters are routinely addressed through the process in consultation with the Council's specialist officers on land contamination matters, as well as in responses from Natural Resources Wales, NRW, as part of ongoing consideration of planning applications. Officers give full regard to all available information. In conclusion, while it is appreciated Mr Richards is concerned about the development of site in question and wishes to ensure that matters such as contamination and wider impacts on amenity are appropriately considered, the Council is wholly satisfied that all matters raised have been considered. I trust that the above will be of assistance to you, given that we consider the complainant to be making unreasonable and persistent demands on the Council. You will understand that we will not be making available any further information to your office on this matter. Yours sincerely, Karen Jones, Chief Executive. Email sent 6th of June 2023 at 22:33. Distribution: Christina, Rees MP Neath, Karen Jones, Chief Executive, NPTC, Jennifer Herbert, Monitoring Officer, Gleneath Residents Against Contamination. Attachments ×3. Dear Christina Rees, copied to Mrs Karen Jones with supplementary note. Thank you for forwarding the reply made to you by the Neath-Port Talbot Council Chief Executive. It would seem that both she and Councillor Noyle wish to discredit me, but without actually providing you with evidence that I have committed a crime or any such act that requires this defamation of character. I would suggest that in our previous contacts you were aware of the quality of my work and that my analysis and representation of factual evidence, as in previous cases, is spot on. I have been publicly discredited by Neath-Port Talbot Council public officials since I stood up for the rights of around 30 elderly residents whom I supported because Neath-Port Talbot Council refused them the right to communicate through their regular channels during the COVID pandemic. They wanted to live in safety and object against the housing development during the pandemic. However, the only option offered to them was to send an email to the Council to raise objections. I then got blocked from sending too many emails in support of residents who didn't have access to email. I am of course aware that these discreditations are words that have no substance, and as such they do not cause the same havoc to one's brain as does the toxic waste we are living next to. I have passed the Chief Executive's response on to the Gleneath Residents Against Contamination Monitoring Officer, Jennifer Herbert, who I'm sure will be in touch with you. I am replying in this instance to you in my role as a Director of Rugby Relics Limited in support of one of our Neath-Port Talbot Council tax-paying employees who wishes to remain anonymous. They wish to make representation to you that they believe attacks on my character by Neath-Port Talbot Council public officials are outrageous and unwarranted, and ask that you request Mrs. Jones that she make these allegations public for all to see. Our employee has asked me to make the representation in line with the new Neath-Port Talbot Council Corporate Plan, Section 9, Resetting Relationships, and your part in resetting relationships, and in particular the following requests by the Council that they wish residents to do: help, protect and support children, young people and vulnerable residents. Tell us what matters to you and let us know if we get things wrong. Get involved in your community. The Council Chief Executive should be aware that for the last 3 years I have been involved in the community protecting and supporting children, young people and vulnerable residents from crimes her council are committing against them. I've been telling her council what they are doing wrong. Unfortunately, they just don't listen. Instead, I've suffered constant abuse and attacks from her council, which I've recorded and I'm happy to supply at your request. I'm sure the Council Chief Executive is most likely unaware that my support team is probably twice as qualified as her planning team in the relevant subject matter with which we are dealing. From a personal point of view, as regards the content of her email, I would note that in your email to NPTC, you provided documentary evidence that NPTC Planning Department malpractice had placed their lives in danger in 2008 by not following contaminated land protocol. The response by the Chief Executive fails to refer to this document, but does refer to subject matter contained in the document, so it must be considered an official response from Neath-Port Talbot Council to our September 2020 Council of Death document as requested by you. From its content, which consists of generic inferences and supported by evidence, the response by the Chief Executive, we can see, is intended to cover up and support past, present and future corruption, criminal activity within the Neath-Port Talbot Council that has, is and or will cause deaths among your electorate. Mrs. Karen Jones refers to this as alleged impacts. I am copying Mrs. Jones into this email so that she is aware of our stance in relation to her reply. The alleged impacts she refers to are people's lives. These are human beings who have placed their trust in the organisation she represents. They are people who have paid their council tax, their hard-earned money to be protected by her organisation. They are people who have been failed by her organisation and have almost certainly lost lives because of corrupt planning officials and their failure to regulate corrupt waste contractors and developers. Mrs. Jones is seen to be supporting these activities in her communication to you. The response from the Chief Executive identifies that she is in effect the head of a well-organised criminal organisation who have worked together with environmental criminals such as the Cuddy Group and Enzo Sauro of Enzo Homes to place residents surrounding the Hale Glyn site in danger of death. Evidence published to social media by Councillor Simon Noyle identifies that planning officials and councillors were meeting Enzo Sauro on site as he was breaking the conditions set by the planning committee. We believe that the response made by the Chief Executive is a criminal offence defined by the UK Government as misconduct in public office. The communication made to you is intended to discredit a council tax-paying member of NPTC without providing evidence, provide you with generic refutations in relation to council malpractice without providing evidence to support this, deny you, Christina Rees, the opportunity to access information to support your electorate living within Neath-Port Talbot, which is their right under UK law. She does this without just cause. To confirm the criminal nature of Mrs. Jones' activities and how she is now personally supporting the murder of Glynneath residents, I would refer you to the following passage from the email. Turning specifically to the issue of land contamination at the site and whether the council has historically contravened the Environmental Protection Act 1990. Officers have advised me that this legislation no longer applies when a site is going through the planning process. By definition, therefore, the council has not at any point contravened its duties under this legislation, as it is not relevant once the planning process has commenced. What is relevant, however, is that through the planning process, the council is required to address land contamination to ensure sites are safe and suitable for use after development has been completed. And I would then direct you towards the following planning application, awaiting decision on the Neath-Port Talbot Council website, P2020-1/0546. Website address. I would refer you to the first item on the list, the decision notice for the plans P2020-0863 approved in March 2021. These approved plans constitute the removal of the chemical testing for at least 21,000 cubic metres of contaminated and toxic waste that include areas tested and found to be contaminated in 2008 and in 2020. This is the area we identified as contaminated in 2008 and not remediated in the document to which the Chief Executive was responding. I would refer you again to what Mrs Jones said. What is relevant, however, is that through the planning process, the Council is required to address land contamination to ensure sites are safe and suitable for use after development has been completed. The spoil heap that has had the testing removed in the P20-0863 plans have been tested 3 times and found to be contaminated on each occasion, most recently in 2020, with contamination recorded as being up to 9 times above the safety guidelines. The contaminated land officer at Neath-Port Talbot Council stated that the tests were shallow and not satisfactory, and he was also made aware of resident eyewitness reports of barrels that may contain toxic waste being dumped at the site. According to law, the land should be tested again or remediated. According to Karen Jones's council, the land is not contaminated, despite tests that say it is, and it can now be redistributed and moved next to people's homes without further testing. This is the breach of the 1990 Environmental Protection Act that Karen Jones is covering up. This is not supposition, this is a fact. This is factual evidence, and it is contained on the council website for you to see. We also have video and photographic evidence to corroborate everything we say. I would refer you again to what our specialist who deals with toxic waste on a regular basis states. Potentially we could see a national disaster in which dozens of people may die. Quite simply, we can expect to see a lot more of Mrs Jones' alleged impacts. I would also refer you to the attached image which provides evidence that contradicts the Chief Executive's opinions on the role of the Environmental Protection Act within the planning process, and the following YouTube video which was uploaded almost 2 years ago. The content of our video has not been responded to by the 5 Neath-Port Talbot Council officials, including Kerry Morris, Simon Noyle, Del Morgan and the council leader at the time. They were all hand-delivered a letter offering them the opportunity to provide counter-evidence to the information contained in the video. To the following YouTube videos, you will see how Kerry Morris, the head of Planning and Public Protection, clearly misrepresents the role of the Environmental Protection Act 1990 in the planning process, and how, if Mrs Jones believes that her officers are telling the truth, she should provide a screenshot image from the 1990 Environmental Protection Act legislation that contradicts the guidance of the UK Environmental Law Association. Failure to do so is a clear indication of a criminal action. We've been publicly stating for the last 2 years that Kerry Morris is continuing to and has potentially murdered Glynneath residents to support the corrupt activities of the Neath-Port Talbot Council Planning Department. The Rugby Relics Limited owned website to which Mrs Jones refers you, walkaroundwales.com will now refer to the Neath-Port Talbot Council as the Council of Killers. Mrs Jones' response now means that three major figures within the council, the chief executive, the council leader and the mayor, can all be proven to be supporting planning department malpractice that is almost certainly killing residents around the site. This, in my opinion, makes the council a criminal organisation. Mrs Jones has been added to the Council of Killers Corruption Coalition page, and we have introduced a new Council of Killers logo that we are now using publicly. We would be delighted to offer the Council the opportunity to challenge us through the legal process. The more publicity we achieve through this, the more people will understand the level of depravity this Council can sink to in this pursuit of self-serving. Please note that this information being presented to you in this communication is designed to help you in your role as the elected member of the UK Parliament, for you to decide on which way you can best support the people whom you are elected to represent. This communication is not intended to be a complaint, merely an observation that will allow you to do your job as an MP. Any referral into government complaints or civil legal process will be deemed as inappropriate and an attempt to discharge your responsibility as a person who's elected and paid to represent United Kingdom residents with problems that may cause their death. Rugby Relics Limited has been supporting the residents surrounding the Haleglyn site since the beginning of the COVID pandemic. It is not our responsibility to take on this role. In this case, we are representing a member of staff. We'll be happy to supply further information or answer questions in relation to this subject matter should you require it. If you believe the information we are providing you is biased or incorrect in any way, you should state this in a return communication. Regards, Di Richards, Director, Rugby Relics Limited. Note for Karen Jones. Christina Rees MP provided you with evidence of contaminated land that has not been dealt with in accordance with UK law. You should now ask your head of planning for the status of the land that was tested as contaminated. I have already supplied you with the answer to this question, which is the land has now been declared as inert. So when you next go to use the term officers have advised me, the judge will say, but Mr Richards advised you, did he not? Did you check that information? Your head of planning and public protection personally signed contaminated land off as inert, clean, in the plans P2020-0863. This land is contaminated and will be allowed to be moved next to people's homes when the plans P2021-0546 are passed. It is my intention to report you to the police for the attempted murder of Glynneath residents in the next few weeks, based upon the misinformation in your letter, which also breaches the NPTC Staff Code of Conduct. I won't bother with the Ombudsman. You are a criminal and you deserve to be in prison. I would suggest that you now have an opportunity to make use of the PIDA Act before I make that report. The Public Interest Disclosure Act 1998, PIDA, offers protection to workers from any detriment from their employer that arises from the worker making a protected disclosure. To qualify as a protected disclosure, the disclosure must satisfy a number of requirements under PIDA 1.1. The worker must have made a qualifying disclosure. This is a disclosure of information which, in the reasonable belief of the worker, tends to show one or more of the following: that a criminal offence is being committed, or is likely to be committed, that a person is failing, or is likely to fail to comply with any legal obligation to which he is subject, that a miscarriage of justice has occurred, is occurring, or is likely to occur, that the health and safety of any individual has been, is being, or is likely to be endangered, that the environment has been, is being, or is likely to be damaged, that information tending to show any matter falling within any of the preceding paragraphs has been, or is likely to be, deliberately concealed. Delivery of the hard copy of the email to Christina Rees that was copied to Karen Jones was received by Peter at the reception at Port Talbot Civic Centre on the 7th of June 2023. It is now 6 months since the document was hand-delivered to Neath-Port Talbot Council, and no reply has been received from either Christina Rees or Karen Jones.